have the main tube from an Estes Hornet rocket kit. So we'll do the fins. Put the fin guide on. Helps if you get the tape ready first. I'm going to match up those two lines. This is for the launch lug. Off camera, I used a door jamb to mark the lines. 4 lines, 1 for each fin. Also put a mark 1/2 inch up on the lines so to mark where the base of the fins goes, and put the launch lug line down. And I like to put LL on the launch lug line so I remember. Next step is fins. We'll pop these fins out. The laser cut fins, you can tell it's laser cut because of the burn marks. Very easy to pop out. All right, fins lined up. Quick sanding to knock down the edges. We'll glue the fins on next. As always, we just want to first glue for the fins is just enough to stick the fins to the rocket. So put a nice thin coat of glue on the fins. We'll set our fins out over here we'll let the glue sit and get tacky. A little bit of glue. I set this aside for a few minutes to let the glue get tacky. The only thing I'm going to watch for is the grain line on the fins to make sure the grain matches on each fin. And I want to get the fin going true on each line, and then the bottom of the fin lined up with my mark 1/2 inch at a 1/2 inch. Glue is nice and tacky. This is going on real easy. We'll add glue fillets, or fillet is an additional glue that will fill in the joint between the body tube and the fin, and will add a lot of strength. You don't need much glue sticking it on. You'll get all the strength you need by adding the glue fillet. What I want to do is you'll look down to make sure each fin is true. And if one's way out of line and you don't catch it till after it dries, that's the other thing about adding just a little bit of glue, is you can just snap it off. Like, these aren't quite lined up, are they? Little work off camera, lined us all up. And I'm going to just sit this here, let it dry. We'll add the fillets as soon as this glue dries in a couple minutes. The fins have dried just enough to allow a fillet to be laid down. So there's 4 fins on this rocket. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take eight toothpicks. I've trimmed each toothpick so that it'll fit inside of, it's no longer than 1 fin length. What I'm going to do is I'm going to glue a toothpick onto the inside of each fin. What this does is it makes the fins very strong. They'll be really glued to the body tube, and I've actually snapped fins off, and the balsa breaks above the fillet at this when you do it this way. So it's an incredibly strong joint. I like to put the pointy end up, just adds a little aerodynamic look. These add weight to the rocket. I'm more interested in overbuilding it so it doesn't break than adding weight. I'd rather lose a few feet of altitude and be able to recover the rocket. I'll add more glue over the top of this to fill in the gaps between the fin, the body tube, and the toothpick. Now that all the toothpicks are in place, what I'll do is I'll just spin the rocket and I'll carry it around with me as I walk around, and in 5 or 10 minutes the glue will set up enough that it won't run. If you set it down now, you'll get a bead of glue that'll drip down, and that'll be the same with a traditional glue fillet where you just put glue in, or with this toothpick method where you put a toothpick in, you'll get a glue bead dripping up or down that you may or may not want to take care of later. It's been a few minutes. The glue has started to set up in the fillet, so I'm going to add another layer. I like to add multiple thin layers as opposed to one thick layer. And for finishing purposes, you want to make sure you get glue, on the top and on the bottom. It's easy to get it on the sides. It's a little harder to get it up on top and the bottom. You can use another toothpick, or you can use a finger, or you can use a piece of scrap balsa to help fill in the glue. So I ended up putting it on pretty thick, so I'm going to go get a wet paper towel and use a finger to smooth this out. It's time to do the motor mount. First thing to do is mark 1 inch up and then mark 2.5 inches up. Now I'm going to beef this thing up a little bit. I got a piece of a spent engine that I used a saw to cut off. I'm going to glue that in place. So instead of providing just a little bit of bite, I'm going to glue it in. So that means when I put the engine mount in, I need to go down a little bit further than the recommended 1/4 inch there. Alright, that's what that will look like. At first, got some other stuff to glue on. First is glue at this 1 inch mark. Slip on this band here. I didn't get the glue all the way around, so I'm just going to wrap it a little bit, or spin it a little bit as I... Next is our cardboard cutouts. Now here comes the interesting part. I'm not going to use the stock Estes shock cord, which is the piece of rubber band that you glue in place. That works fine, but I like the idea of attaching the shock cord to the motor mount. So what I have here is a piece of Kevlar kite thread. You buy it online, it's nominal price. And what I'm going to do is attach it to the motor mount when I install the next centering ring. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach this to the centering ring. I don't want to, and I'm going to tie it off here. So I'm going to take my razor blade and I'm just going to add a little bit of a notch. Careful not to cut yourself. And we're going to tie this off so that it passes through the notch. I cut the Kevlar cord to be 1.5 times the length of the model rocket body tube. I'm going to rough up the edge of my homemade ring. You want to push this ring in until it touches the top of the engine hook. I'm going to let it set up for a minute, and then I'm going to add quite a bit of glue fillet, and are going to be nice, safe, and nice and strong. I'm going to attach a shock cord to the end of the Kevlar, so instead of pulling on the body tube at the top with the glue attachment, it's going to be pulling on the through the entire rocket and all the way on the motor mount, which is one of the sturdier pieces. It's been drying for a bit, so I'm going to add glue now to the other side. This is going to get a lot of work. The rocket's going to be pushing on the inside of the tube, so you want to really beef this area up. And with the shock cord tied to the engine mount, you're going to see a lot of forces applied to this. So I'm going to make sure I really fortify this with heavy glue fillets. We're ready for another coat for a glue fillet. Temporarily, I will loop this up and around, and now I can hang this and let it dry. Motor mount is dry now. I dried it hanging. Let it dry overnight because I put so much glue on it. What we're going to do first is just give it a dry fit. Okay, that's a pretty tight fit. The second ring is really the problem. This is one reason why you want to be able to cut your Kevlar kite thread 1.5 times the length of the body tube so you can work with it. Okay. Alright. We've got a nice fit, but it's not overly tight. My plan is to put glue down in here as far in as I can. Insert the motor mount and spin. And what I'll do is I'll put it into about here, and then I'm going to put some more glue in, and then I'll insert it the rest of the way. And I'll let it dry vertically, because what I want to do is let the glue set up real heavy and form a nice bond between the body tube and the centering ring. Okay, I've got a nice bead of glue all around the inside. This is a Gorilla Glue, just regular Gorilla Glue. I'm going to lay this on real thick. This stuff foams up. I'm going to lay it on really, really thick. And then I got to push that in quickly. And I messed up a little bit here because I wanted to put the launch lug and the engine mount on the same line. So, okay, now we'll need to make sure we let the rocket dry vertically so that glue can settle and form a nice glue bond. The engine mount has been drying for time now. I actually hung this by the Kevlar cord. I hung it up so that the glue would flow down towards the bottom of the rings and the joint between the rings and the body tube. And I actually even holding onto the cord, swung the rocket circularly to drive that glue down. I also put an engine into the body tube, and here we'll light that up and you can see the inside. Next step is to add a bunch of glue on the back side of this ring to create a fillet. If you want, you can use a scrap of balsa to add the glue. I'm going to be using the foaming Gorilla Glue again. That is a lot of glue. I'm going to go set the rocket up, put it on something to make sure it doesn't tip over, and we'll let it dry. There are a couple odds and ends to take care of here before we finish up. First is the launch lug. Rough up the bottom of the launch lug where we're going to put the glue. We'll put just enough glue here to tack it on, and then we'll add a glue fillet later. I also need to do the nose cone with the eyelet. Pretty easy to do. Using arm pressure. Screw it in. Once it is in all the way, back it out. Apply a little bit of glue. To go along with the Kevlar shock cord, you also want to have some elastic. So what this is I think 1 millimeter elastic. It's decently stretchy, and I don't think it's going to snap on us, at least not with a light rocket like this. So again, I'm going to cut this to be equal to about 1.5 lengths of the main body tube. We will tie the end of the Kevlar to the end of the elastic. Add a glue fillet to the launch lug. Before we tie off the elastic to the nose cone, we want to make sure that we've got the appropriate tension. Now when we launch the rocket, we'll have a lot of pressure pushing against the nose cone. And we want to make sure that when the charge blows, this comes off pretty loose. So if you hold it upside down, you should be able to hold it up and not have it fall right out. But you really want to have only the very end part to be full thickness. I like to sand down all but the very end, very last 1/8 of an inch, 1/4 of an inch of the nose cone, just to make sure that the nose cone does come off and deploy the parachute correctly. Alright, so we're very loose, all except the very end. And we're loose enough that if we turn the rocket upside down, it doesn't fall off, but if you give it a little bit of a shake, it comes off. So that's about right. We'll pull out the elastic and we'll tie it off now onto the eyelet. Okay, except for the fact we don't have a parachute. In 20 minutes, when all the glue's dried, we'll be able to launch this rocket. Parachute pre-assembled, easy to put on. We'll do that here in a little bit. And we got some finish work to do if we want to paint it. But other than that, we've got a flyable rocket. Off camera, I've painted the rocket with a coat of primer. That's an optional step. I've also used a little sanding wood filler, wetted it down with some water and painted the balsa parts and then sanded it. That's also an optional step. It does a real nice job of filling in the grain on the fins and the nose cone, and if you paint it on the line on the body tube, it'll fill that in. You just have to sand it down with 220 grit sandpaper after you're finished. I've also painted the rocket white, which is what we see now. The white undercoat really helps when you go to paint it, especially a bright color. If you want to paint it fluorescent orange, you will see a huge difference if you paint it white first. And now here, obviously I'm painting it yellow. The rocket's on a homemade rocket stand, just a piece of scrap plywood I have laying around, and a 3/8 inch dowel. The next step I wanted to add a little color, so I've masked off the rocket using blue painter's tape and a plastic bag. And now I'm showing you how painting it cherry red, just a little accent. Well, the painting is finished. Everything's finished except our parachute. Kind of want the parachute. I already attached the nose cone to the elastic. That would probably be better to do after painting, but it worked out. I always relearn this lesson. Get lots of drips on my paint. So the lesson is several light coats of paint versus one heavy coat. Okay, to attach the parachute, it's pretty easy, especially since most of the Estes parachutes nowadays are pre-assembled. Find the loops through the eyelet. After you get the loops through the eyelets, string this through, and now we have a fully functional, ready to shoot rocket. To do the parachute, what you want to do is, I usually fold it into thirds and then wrap it. You want it to be able to rapidly deploy. To load and shoot the rocket, the first thing you do is you pull everything out and you put 1 or 2 pieces of wadding down. Stuff the shock cord in. The recovery wadding's non-flammable. That's a important safety feature to remember. I actually ended up putting a piece of tape right here to tighten this nose cone fit up a little bit. But now we're ready. Except for the wadding in the engine, this rocket is ready to launch. Thanks for watching.